Hi, I'm the Sad Panda, and this is going to be another episode in my series, I Read This Should You. Of course, you know that already by now, that I read a lot, okay? And this story is going to be one of those stories that I read a long time ago, and I kind of forgot about it because, as you kind of know, I read on two things. I read on my phone, which is also what I record on, and I also read on my iPad, which is, it was what I used to read on the most before I got this new phone, which has a lot more more power, right? My old phone, right, it would die really fast, but this phone is really good. And I remember reading this story and I was like, oh man, I should read a little bit of that again. And I read some of it and it started flooding back to me. So I was like, oh, I gotta make it on this web novel. This web novel is called Is That a Wisp? Okay, so this story is about a wisp named Karuni. Let's go over the background of this world, because it'll make more sense if you understand the world. So wisps in this planet, right? So this whole story is very big. All right, there's a lot of different planets. There's a lot of different there's different universes that you can break through if you have enough power, right? And there's separate solar systems and stuff, and it's this whole thing. So it's a lot. But in this particular planet, it's considered one of those hodunk, kind of low on the totem pole type planets, right? So it'd be living way out in the country with no people, right? So the standards are different there, right? So wisps in this planet are very valuable, right? Because wisps are made out of pure energy, right? They're made out of heaven and earth energy, and they're good cultivation material. So when you take a wisp, you can absorb its cultivation and you can gain a big boost in your own cultivation. But the thing is that the more powerful you become, the worse your foundation is because of these wisps. So the whole idea of this story is that you want to build your cultivation with a very sturdy foundation. So if you try to fly through the ranks as fast as you can without stabilizing your foundation and each individual rank, you will end up having a complete collapse of your cultivation, which, think of it like a huge tower, right? When you build a tower, think of the Empire State Building, right? It's generally a little wider on the bottom than the top, right? Because it's so big. That kind of thing is how you can think of the cultivation in this story. So because mind you, you can, in your own, what's it called? I don't know if it's called a Sea of Soul or whatever, but inside your meridians and stuff, you can build your foundation. So your foundation can be whatever you can think of. When you go to a different realm, you can forge your foundation, right? And this is whatever you can think that it is. But the more complicated it is, the more you have to know the thing. So let's say you want your foundation to be like a house, right? Which is not very big in the grand scheme of things, but it can be very stable. And a stable foundation is considered a powerful foundation. And so you have to know all the things that you can possibly know about a house in order to build your foundation out of it. And even though it won't be perfect, it'll be something that you can stabilize over time, right? And so when you absorb a wisp, it boosts your cultivation super fast, but it doesn't let you stabilize your foundation. So the higher you go, the weaker you are. So in this particular planet, wisps are super valuable because no one cultivates to super high levels. So core foundation realm in this planet, which isn't very far, it's only 2 or 3 realms into cultivation, and there's a lot, is you are essentially a god on this planet. You might as well be the best person. You could be royalty considered. That's how powerful these people are on this planet. And so obviously that's not very far, so building a weak foundation and getting there isn't too hard, and it won't collapse most often. So in this, the wisps are valuable. So now you know a little about the world, we can get about the plot here. So Karuni is, the story opens and Karuni is getting chased by a bunch of hunters that hunt wisps because they are worth a lot of money. So obviously there's going to be a market for them. And Karuni has been able to avoid this, and mind you, wisps have a really short lifespan, 10 years, right? But after the age of 2, they gain not only a personality, but the intelligence of an adult. So they can cultivate and stuff, but it's not worth it because their lifespan is so short. But Karuni's 2 years old or 3 years old or whatever, and he is smart enough to know that he's going to get caught, right? And something that wisps can do is they can dissipate their cores and like essentially commit suicide. And he thinks that this is a better option than being captured and used as a cultivation tool. All right. And so as he's being captured, as he's about to dissipate his core, they throw these like spiritual nets over him to try to like stop him from doing that. It like keeps your core together essentially. And in this moment, he meets the like main love interest of the story. Sorry, in my mind, it's very vivid. So I sometimes mistake it for a show. So this girl, she's part of a huge clan of a different planet. So not only is it like a huge clan, so she's like, her cultivation is already way higher than like anyone on the planet. But she's only like 9 or 10, right? And she comes from a huge cultivation clan, a huge family on a one of those like luxurious planets where cultivation is super easy. So there's a lot of very, very powerful people, and she's on this planet because there's some of these clans, right? They do this thing where they go to underdeveloped planets and see what kind of talent is there, because obviously not all of the talented people are going to be born on the luxurious, beautiful cultivation paradises, right? So you could be a person that has just very good cultivation, or has a rare core, which is something that we'll get into a little bit later. And if they find that, they might take you into their family so they can nurture you into be the cultivation like big shot that you are meant to be. So that's why she's there with her like grandfather, even though he's really just a protector of her, but they've been together for so long that he sees her as a granddaughter, and she sees him as like like an old uncle or a grandpa. So it's like this very like loving relationship. Anyway, so we meet this girl, her name is Fife, I do believe actually, and she stops this like assault on Karuni. And she does this because he's very small and he's cute and he obviously is not very strong. So she's like, well, you can't just bully people that are weaker than you. This is a very kid mindset, right? No, you can't just bully people that are weaker than you. And obviously they're scared of her because of how powerful she is, and like, oh, we're sorry, and they leave. And Karuni is obviously grateful, right? He's never met anybody that's cared about a wisp. He's never met any human ever that has any care at all for what wisps are, and like that they are sentient, right? They can speak, and they can cultivate, they can do all the things that a human can do. It's just their lifespan is short, and they're very good cultivation materials, so obviously no one cares. So in this this interaction between Fife and Karuni, she offers to take him to the Wang family estate, right? So like take him off planet and take him to somewhere where he can like thrive for the 10 years that he's alive. And the older cultivator knows that that's not only not going to fly because it's a huge cultivation family, but it's also like he's only going to live 10 years, and that's going to really crush Fife. And so they, after discussing it a little bit, Karuni makes the decision to not go, right? Before anything is spoken from the older gentleman or Fife, he's like, no, I want to show people that wisps aren't to be just bullied around. I'm going to show people that I can become powerful or whatever. And after telling Fife that he's not going to go, Fife does get sad because she's a kid, and he like he's made out of pure energy, so he can like change his shape or whatever, and he changes to like a whale and stuff to try to like make her happy, right? And in doing so, she like vows to marry this person once he becomes powerful enough, because cultivation beasts and animals can, after getting to a certain cultivation, gain a human body, and in doing so they get extra years of life, and it's a whole thing. But she's like, at least someone funny and that doesn't care about status and all that, like this person, this wisp. She was like, all right, when you get strong enough in a few years, like, we'll get married. And he's like, all right, well, I'll get strong enough where everyone can't say that it's not okay. Well, like even your dad, which is like the head of the Wang estates or whatever. And obviously this old cultivator's like, that's not gonna happen. That's just not gonna happen. It takes too long to cultivate to a respectable level, and even then you won't have the lifespan for it. But they give him a technique that lets him build his meridians, that lets him cultivate fast. And it's obviously, it's not going to be a huge use because compared to like the cultivation techniques that like Fife has or he has, it's not good at all, like in comparison. So Krune, obviously he vows that this is going to happen. I'm going to become super strong, and then I'm going to come and find you, and we're going to marry. And obviously, the older cultivator's like, she's just going to forget. It doesn't matter. Like, he doesn't say it out loud, but in his mind, she's like, she's going to forget. At least she's not sad or anything, and that whole thing. But I'm just going to spoil you. She doesn't forget, right? But this whole thing takes place after that moment, right? So a lot of the story is a lot of cultivation, right? Which is a lot of like explaining how your spirit works and how to build your foundation, and all this stuff is very prevalent in this story. One of the things that Krune has the ability to do is wisps, obviously, I told you, are very weak and they have a lifespan of 10 years. So every like realm you break through, you get double the life that you could live. So like a human, if they cultivate to the second realm, which is, I think, foundation establishment realm, if you cultivate to the second realm, you get another 100 years of life, because humans could live to 100 years, right? That's like the thing. And so you would get another 100 years. So you'd be able to live to 200, which gives you more time to cultivate, because the higher the realm of cultivation, the more difficult and longer it takes to get there. But what they don't know is that this technique that they give Krune is designed specifically for wisps. They don't know that because it's considered one of those like super weak like cultivation techniques that maybe if you literally had nothing else, it would be better than nothing, obviously, but you could choose anything else and be better. It's one of those things. They don't know, well, no one knows the origination of this technique, and obviously Krune doesn't either, but it turns out that this, like, it's learned later in the story that this technique was made by a wisp for wisps. And it's obviously not complete, right? And the story continues, and later on, Krune completes it for wisps. So it makes it so wisp, I'm saying wisps a lot, and so I'm hearing that. Anyway, he completes it, and it gives wisp the opportunity to cultivate and not die. I mean, obviously, when you break through realms, there's a tribulation, which you get struck by like lightning and stuff, which is in a lot of cultivation stories, that's a thing where it's like you're going against heaven, so heaven like tries to strike you down, but in essence, it's just like a trial you have to go through, and the trials are slightly different depending on what heaven you are under, which I'll explain that right now as well. So when I told you earlier that there's a lot of space, right? There's a lot of places in this story. So there's multiple planets, there's multiple like universes, right? And if you were in a different universe, there's different heavens, which means different tribulations. There's also like beings that are responsible for the tribulations, but I'm not going to get into that because that is later on in the story. But as this story continues, right, he gets this meridian technique, he starts to learn it, and he builds his human body. So wisps are so weak that even in the second realm, you can transform into a human, which it kind of makes sense because of how weak they are and how long they live. Compared to any other like spiritual beast or cultivation beast, it's really short. And a lot of cultivation beasts don't even get to the point to create a human body, but if they do, it's like 3 or 4 realms, right? So it's a lot of work. But since he's so weak, it's only the first realm, and then he can cultivate with human techniques because he has spirit meridians already, which is something that the meridian technique does. And he ends up getting picked up by what's it called? Like a teacher from a different planet, right? They do this thing. I told you a little bit about it earlier where they come down and they scout, right? And he ends up getting picked up because he's a wisp and he is already like cultivated to like the core foundation realm, which is very difficult for humans to do, let alone a wisp, right? So he gets taken to a different planet where he gets like his like energy read and like how powerful he is, and it's this whole thing. And honestly, the story it's a lot to remember, right? It's a lot going on. There's a lot going on, and that's one of the things I actually like about the story is how much is actually happening. Because a lot of times when you read a story, it feels like nothing is happening besides what the protagonist is doing, right? But in other in this story specifically, a lot of the times he's not, like, it's not just about what Croni's doing. There's like politics going on in the background. There's like schools that are like duking it out or whatever going on in the background. It's just, I just like stories that feel like it's alive. Like, think about like One Piece, for instance. If you read One Piece, right, there's these things called cover stories. And I mean, if you don't read One Piece, I'll explain it. But these cover stories, they kind of show what's going on outside of like Luffy and the Straw Hats, right? So it's not just Luffy is doing his thing and the world revolves around Luffy. No, it's like everything else. There's stuff happening, right? I'm not going to spoil anything, but there's a big fight between two very powerful people, one of which is close to Luffy. And we don't see that fight happen, but we know that he loses. The person that's close to Luffy loses, and it starts this huge like arc for Luffy, because that happened when he didn't even know about it. He didn't even hear about it until it was almost too late. And I'm not going to go over what that is. I mean, if you read One Piece or if you know One Piece, you know what I'm talking about. But it's this whole thing, and it feels like the world's alive. And you get that a little bit with this story, right? Where you know that there's other planets, there's other universes. You know about all this stuff pretty early on. And you know that, like, there's like big clans, there's big wars happening and things like that, which do play a part, which is what I like about this story as well. It's one of those things where I really just like when they bring up something in a story that never comes up again, you know what I mean? And everything that's brought up, at least from what I've read, which I haven't read the whole thing, right? I've only read like 400 chapters, but that's enough to do my normal 100 chapter reviews, right? I like that kind of stuff. I literally lost my train of thought, which happens to me sometimes when I get to thinking about other things. But anyways, that's about it for this video. I don't want to go overboard like I have been the past couple times. So I'm just going to put a cap on it here. If you want to read the story, it's on Web Novel. I do believe it's free. I'm not certain, because I don't remember, because I haven't read it in a while, right? I read up to like 400 and I took a break. That's a lot of times what I do with like really long stories, and I just haven't gone back to read on my iPad. I've just been busy reading like Super Gene and Chrysalis and stuff on my phone. But, you know, that's just is what it is. I gotta give it a 7.5 out of 10. A 7.5 sounds about right. There's sometimes I feel like the main character is a little too lucky, right? But that's just my opinion, right? A lot of times main characters are very lucky and very prosperous, and I just feel like sometimes it's just a little too lucky. But, you know, what do you do? This is a story, you know, it is what it is. But that's about it for this. And if you like my content, please leave a like and a comment. I always respond to them. And if you don't like my content, leave a dislike and a comment. I would like to know how to do better, all right? And if you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe. I do this content pretty often. I try to have it scheduled as every other day, but I missed yesterday. That's my bad. No, that's my B. But here I am. And I hope you have a great rest of your day. Yeah, that's it.